The wind howled across the wide-open plains, whipping snow into jagged swirls that stung the skin like tiny shards of glass. The sun had long dipped behind the distant mountains, leaving the ranch bathed in a cold, bluish twilight. At the edge of the property, near the old wooden stable, a figure stumbled through the drifts. Every step seemed heavier than the last, her boots sinking into the thick snow as her breath came out in ragged puffs. Jonathan Drake stood at the window of his main house, a glass of bourbon warming his hand, his eyes narrowing at the silhouette. He was a man accustomed to control, wealthy, disciplined, and fiercely independent. His ranch sprawled for miles, a testament to years of calculated work, inherited fortune, and a stubborn refusal to be anyone's debtor, not even a love. But something about the figure in the snow made him pause. He could see her now, collapsing with a desperate, shivering thud, snow clinging to her hair and coat. A gasp escaped him. Most strangers would have been left to the elements, but something deep inside him, an unspoken, stubborn ember, compelled him to act. He threw on his coat, grabbed a lantern, and trudged through the snow toward her. Each crunch of the icy ground beneath his boots echoed in the empty night. When he reached her, he dropped to his knees. Hey, are you alive?" His voice was rough but urgent. She barely stirred, her eyes fluttering open, a mix of frostbite and fear clouding them. I, she whispered, voice trembling. "I can't move." Don't try. I've got you." He lifted her carefully into his arms, feeling the bone-deep chill seep through his coat. Her skin was icy, almost brittle, and he knew that if he didn't get her inside fast, she wouldn't survive the night. By the time he reached the warmth of the stable, the fire in the hearth was barely more than embers. He threw more logs onto it, the flames crackling to life, throwing shadows across her pale face. She coughed weakly, eyes wide, staring at him like he was some guardian angel in the freezing darkness. Who are you?" she managed. "Doesn't matter right now. Just stay with me." His voice softened, something he hadn't allowed himself to do in years. He rubbed her hands, trying to coax warmth into them, and wrapped her in blankets he grabbed from the hayloft. She shivered violently, and he realized she hadn't eaten in days, or maybe longer. Her story was buried somewhere behind the frost in her voice and the fear in her eyes. But for now, survival was all that mattered. Hours passed. The snowstorm outside raged with the ferocity of a winter tempest, relentless and merciless. Inside the stable, Jonathan kept watch over her, his own heart thumping in ways he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't used to feeling needed, to having someone depend on him in such a raw, fragile way. But she did, and in that helpless vulnerability, something inside him shifted. When she finally fell into a fitful, exhausted sleep, he stepped back and stared at her. She was beautiful in a way that went beyond looks. There was fire in her spirit, even under the layers of snow and trauma. But there was also a story he could feel pressing against him, a story of injustice, hardship, and secrets untold. The next morning, sunlight glimmered through the frosted stable windows. She woke to find herself lying on a pile of fresh hay, a cup of warm tea in her trembling hands. The storm had passed, but the chill lingered, just as uncertainty lingered in the air between them. I don't even know how I got here," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "I was running." "Running from what?" Jonathan asked, sitting on the edge of the haystack across from her. His eyes didn't leave hers. She swallowed hard, a tear escaping down her frozen cheek. "Everything. My family, my life. I had nowhere else to go." Jonathan's jaw tightened. There was anger in her story, anger at a world that pushed her collapse in the snow outside his stable. But there was also courage. He could see it flickering beneath the frostbite of despair. "You're safe here," he said finally. "For now, at least." She looked up at him, hesitant, uncertain. Trust didn't come easy. But he could tell she was thinking, calculating. Something in her eyes told him she was stronger than she appeared, a survivor who had been forged in fire, or ice, in this case. As the sun climbed higher, melting the last of the snow on the roof, the moment of quiet broke. A distant sound carried across the plains, a carriage clattering over frozen ground. A figure appeared, someone searching, calling her name. Her eyes widened in panic, and she jumped to her feet. "They found me." Jonathan grabbed her hand, steadying her. Who's after you? She swallowed, voice trembling. People who want to control me. People who don't care if I live or die. His eyes darkened. Something inside him hardened into resolve. He had spent years avoiding attachments, avoiding responsibility that could touch his heart. But now, he couldn't let her be taken. Not when she had survived the storm. Not when fate had thrown her into his arms. Then they're not getting you, he said, his voice low, steady, and filled with an unshakable promise. Not while I'm here. And in that instant, the snow outside the stable seemed almost symbolic. Not just a storm to survive, but the chill of the world trying to crush hope. And yet here, in the flickering firelight, two strangers had begun a journey neither of them could have foreseen. But neither of them knew how far the danger reached, nor the lengths they would have to go to survive, and to trust each other. As the first real rays of sunlight hit the horizon, a shadow fell across the stable door. Footsteps, not theirs. And then a voice they both feared, cold, commanding, and filled with authority, echoed across the hayloft. You cannot hide from me, girl. Come out, now. Her grip on Jonathan's hand tightened, and he could feel her pulse racing against his own. The storm had passed, but the real danger was only beginning. The shadow outside the stable door didn't move, but the presence was heavy, like the way the storm had followed him indoors. Jonathan tightened his grip on the lantern, stepping in front of her as if his mere posture could shield her from the unknown. Who are you with? He demanded, voice steady but sharp, every muscle in his body ready for action. There was no reply, only the crunch of snow outside, slow and deliberate, the sound of footsteps circling the stable. Her eyes were wide with fear, pupils dilated, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know what they want, but they won't stop. I ran for months, and they just keep coming. Jonathan's jaw tightened. He had dealt with businessmen trying to seize his land, hired hands who lied, and rivals who threatened his wealth, but never anyone like this. These weren't simple threats of money or property. This was personal, dangerous, and the way fear had etched itself into her eyes made it clear she had survived much worse than just a snowstorm. Then we need a plan, he said. His mind raced as he looked around the stable. The horses stamped nervously in their stalls, sensing the tension. You stay here. I'll see who's out there. If they try to come in, I'll stop them. No, she exclaimed, grabbing his arm. You can't. You'll... Shoo! He silenced her with a finger pressed gently to her lips. You've been running long enough. You're not running anymore. Not if I can help it. Her eyes searched his, looking for a trace of doubt. There was none. And that was the moment she realized. This wasn't just a man of wealth or pride. This was someone who refused to let fear dictate his actions. Someone who understood courage when he saw it. The sound of footsteps stopped abruptly, then came again, faster this time, accompanied by a low, menacing laugh that cut through the cold morning air. Jonathan moved to the door, peering through a narrow slit in the wood. Two figures stood at the edge of the snow-covered yard, cloaked in shadows. Their posture wasn't casual. It was predatory. They weren't here for conversation. They were here for control. He backed away from the door, returning to her side. We don't have much time. I need to know everything. Why they're after you. What they want. No detail is too small. She swallowed hard, shivering. It's my family or what's left of it. They want the Drake fortune. My father, he took money that wasn't his. People are looking to reclaim it, and they think I know where it is. They'll do anything to find out. Jonathan froze. The Drake fortune. He had heard whispers of it when he was younger. A story of wealth hidden, of betrayals that left families broken. But the idea that someone would be hunted across states, running through blizzards, just to extract information, it was monstrous. They can't find it, he said firmly. Not while I'm alive. Not here. Not anywhere you are. Her eyes glimmered with something that hadn't been there before. Hope. Not naive hope, but cautious hope. Fragile as frost on a window pane. You really mean that? I do. He stepped closer, his presence solid and unwavering. But we can't wait. They're not leaving. If we stay, they'll break in. We need to move. She nodded, a silent pact forming between them. Together, they packed a few essentials, blankets, food, and a revolver Jonathan insisted on bringing, though she had never held one before. He showed her how to hold it, how to load it, his voice calm but authoritative, each word reinforcing a sense of security she hadn't felt in years. As they mounted horses under the gray dawn sky, the first shots rang out, not at them, but at the fences and barns around the stable. A warning, a message. Someone had tracked her, and now they were asserting dominance, daring them to flee. Jonathan urged his horse forward, cutting across the frozen plains. Snow sprayed under their hooves as they raced through the morning mist. She clung to him, heart hammering, realizing how much he had come to rely on his strength, on his determination to protect her, and maybe something more. But the past has a way of catching up, and even as they galloped toward the tree line that marked the edge of his property, she heard it, a familiar voice, cold and unmistakable, cutting through the howling wind. "Stop running. Elena, you belong to us." Her name, spoken like a threat, like a claim. Her grip on Jonathan's arm tightened, nails digging into his coat. "They know my name," she whispered, voice trembling. "They've tracked me this far. They know who I am." Jonathan's jaw tightened. Every instinct screamed at him. Don't let them catch her. Protect her. Fight. And yet, he knew this wouldn't end at the edge of his land. The danger was far greater than either of them had anticipated. They burst through the forest, branches snapping, snow clinging to their boots and horses. The world felt vast, and yet each step carried them closer to confrontation. "I won't let them take you," he said again, more to himself than to her. His eyes burned with resolve. "I don't care what it costs." She glanced at him, startled by the raw intensity in his gaze. She had never met anyone like him. Someone who had spent years keeping himself distant, yet now, in the cold, biting morning, was willing to risk everything for her. And just as they thought they had a moment of reprieve, a sudden, deafening crack split the air, the sound of a tree falling in the distance, deliberately cut as if to block their escape. Jonathan slammed his heels into the horse, trying to maneuver, but the snow made the ground treacherous. Her heart leapt into her throat. "They're smarter than we thought," she said, panic threading her voice. "They're nothing compared to us," he replied, voice low, unwavering. "We survive storms, we survive worse. Together." And in that moment, she realized that survival wasn't just about escaping the snow, the cold, or the hunters. It was about trust, courage, and the courage to face the storm within themselves. But just as the first glimmers of safety appeared over the ridge, a figure emerged from the snow, a mounted rider, tall and menacing, aiming directly at them, cutting off their path. Jonathan's hand tightened around the reins. She gripped his arm. "Hold on," he said, and as the rider raised his weapon, the horizon seemed to darken, the stakes higher than ever. The rider's silhouette cut through the gray morning like a dark omen. Mounted high on a black stallion, he moved with a predator's precision, snow spraying in sharp arcs from his horse's hooves. Jonathan tightened his grip on the reins, muscles coiled like steel springs, and urged his horse forward. "Hold on!" he shouted over the roar of the wind, and Elena's hands dug into his coat, icy fingers trembling but refusing to let go. The rider's voice rang out, chilling and unmistakable. "Elena, stop this foolishness. You cannot outrun me." Her name on his lips felt like a curse. Her stomach twisted as memories she had tried to bury clawed their way to the surface. Her father's cold stare, the nights she had run screaming through empty streets, the endless threats of a life she had tried to escape. "Who is he?" she asked, voice barely audible over the wind. "He's one of them," Jonathan said, jaw set. "He's dangerous. Stay close. Do not let go." The snow turned from soft drifts into jagged, icy ridges as they galloped across the plains. The rider was fast, trained, relentless, almost unervingly so. Each time they thought they'd gained ground, he was there, always closing the distance, cutting off their escape. "Jonathan, we can't outrun him forever." Elena cried, panic flashing across her pale face. "We don't have to outrun him," Jonathan said, eyes scanning the terrain for an advantage. "We're smarter than he thinks. Trust me." Elena wanted to argue, but the fear that had defined her life, The years of hiding, running, surviving had begun to shift. For the first time, she realized she wasn't alone. There was someone willing to fight with her, for her, who refused to let her be consumed by the danger that had stalked her for months. They reached a narrow ravine, the cliffs rising like frozen walls on either side. Jonathan slowed his horse, signaling her to do the same. He dismounted, gripping the reins tightly, and turned to her. Listen to me. You're not just running for your life anymore. You're running for the truth about them, about your father, about everything they've tried to hide. We're going to stop this. Elena, together. She swallowed, a shiver running through her, not from the cold, but from the sheer intensity of his words. For the first time, the terror that had been her constant companion began to mingle with something else. Hope. The rider approached, eyes cold and merciless. Hand her over, Drake. You don't belong in this. I belong wherever I choose, Jonathan said, his voice hard as steel. And she's not going anywhere with you. The man's lips twisted into a cruel smile. Then you'll die for it. The confrontation was sudden and brutal. The rider spurred his horse forward, aiming to strike. But Jonathan was ready. He kicked the side of his horse, pivoting sharply, throwing snow into the rider's face. Elena watched, heart in her throat, as their horses collided in a burst of ice and fury. Jonathan's hand shot out, grabbing the rider's arm as he swung a rope from his saddle. The rope wrapped around the rider's horse, causing it to stumble. The man cursed, scrambling to regain control, while Jonathan and Elena bolted down the ravine, using the cliffs as cover. Once they reached a narrow ledge, Jonathan pulled her behind him, breath ragged. We're not safe yet, he said, scanning the horizon, but we bought ourselves time. Now tell me everything about your father, your family, why they're after you. Elena's hands trembled as she spoke, the words spilling out like water breaking through a dam. My father, he was greedy. He took more than he should have from people who couldn't fight back. And when he died, they came for me, his debts, his enemies, the people he wronged. I've been running ever since, hiding, hoping I could disappear. Jonathan's eyes darkened. He could feel the weight of her past pressing down, the injustice that had shaped her, hardened her, and yet had not broken her entirely. And you survived, he said softly. Despite everything, you survived. That makes you stronger than any of them. Her gaze lifted, meeting his. Something unspoken passed between them, a fragile thread of trust, of understanding, of shared resilience. She realized that he wasn't just protector. He was a partner in survival. But survival wasn't the same as freedom. The man on the black stallion was not going to relent, and the Drake fortune was a prize worth killing for. And as the sun rose higher, casting pale light over the frozen ravine, a new realization dawned. They were being herded carefully, deliberately, towards something bigger, something that could trap them entirely. Jonathan tightened his grip on the reins. We're going to turn this around. We're not running anymore. Elena, we fight. We take back control. Her heart pounded at his words. Fighting had always seemed impossible, unthinkable. Running had been her instinct, her shield. But for the first time, she felt the stirrings of courage, not just to survive, but to confront the people who had haunted her and to reclaim her life. Suddenly, from the ridge above, another rider appeared, this one taller, broader, the sun glinting off the edge of his sword. He was waiting, patient and calculating, a silent commander of the pursuit. Jonathan's jaw clenched. It's a trap, he muttered. They knew we'd run this way. They'd been planning this months. Elena's grip on his arm tightened. Then we fight. Together, she whispered, and he could feel the resolve in her voice, fragile but unwavering. And as the three figures, two behind, one ahead, closed into the blinding snow, Jonathan realized that this fight would demand everything: strength, courage, and a willingness to trust each other completely. The first clash was inevitable, and there was no turning back. The ravine stretched ahead like a frozen canyon, walls of jagged ice towering over them. Jonathan's horse stumbled on a patch of hidden ice. Snow sprang into the air, and Elena nearly fell. He grabbed her arm, steadying her, their faces inches apart, hearts hammering in unison. Hold on, he said, voice low but fierce. We're not done yet, not by a long shot. From above, the tall rider appeared, silhouette sharp against the pale sky. He was massive, broad-shouldered, and moved with terrifying precision. Jonathan recognized the look in his eyes immediately. Calculated, cold, and unflinching. This was the commander of their pursuers, the one who had orchestrated months of terror to corner Elena. "I told you, girl." The man's voice boomed, echoing off the ice. "You can't hide from your fate. You belong to us." Elena's jaw tightened. She had spent months running from this, living in fear, hiding in shadows, and trusting no one. But now, standing beside Jonathan, she felt a spark ignite in her chest, a courage she hadn't known existed. "We don't belong to anyone," she said, voice firm. "And we're not afraid of you." The rider laughed, a sound like frozen steel breaking. Brave words for someone who was about to die in the snow. Jonathan's hands clenched the reins. "I've spent years protecting what's mine. I won't let you take her, and I won't let anyone dictate what we do." With a sudden surge, the three horses collided in the narrow ravine. Snow exploded in every direction as Jonathan swung his rope, tangling the commander's horse in a mess of reins. The rider cursed, regaining balance but losing precious momentum. Elena, gripping the side of her horse, felt her pulse racing. "Jonathan, we can't hold him forever." "We don't have to," he said. "We've got one shot. Follow my lead." They raced toward a narrow ice bridge spanning the ravine, a thin, treacherous line suspended over a freezing torrent below. Jonathan's plan was risky, dangerous, but it was their only chance. "On three," he whispered. 1, 2, 3. They surged across the ice bridge. The black stallion of the commander followed, but the ice beneath him cracked with a thunderous snap. Snow and ice cascaded into the dark waters below. The rider swore, barely maintaining control, and was forced to retreat. Elena exhaled sharply, her hands trembling. I can't believe we made it." Jonathan turned to her, eyes blazing. "You believe in yourself. You're stronger than you know. That's why we survived." But there was no time to rest. Beyond the ice bridge lay the Drake estate, a place Elena had never dared to return, a place that held the secrets, the fortune, and the people who had hunted her for months. The truth was waiting there, cold and unyielding. As they approached the gates, Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. Memories surged, her father's greed, the men who had chased her, the threats she had endured. And yet, alongside the fear, there was a rising determination, a fire that she hadn't felt since before she had begun running. Jonathan dismounted, helping her off the horse. "We face this together," he said. "No running, no hiding. We confront them and take back control." The gates of the estate creaked open as they approached, revealing shadows moving inside. Figures cloaked in dark coats, faces obscured, armed with weapons and authority. Elena's knees threatened to buckle, but Jonathan's steady presence kept her rooted. "Stay behind me," he whispered. "Trust me." Inside, the air was thick with tension. Elena's family's former allies, men and women who had once been loyal, looked at her with suspicion, fear, and greed. Her father's past misdeeds had left scars deeper than she had realized. "Welcome back, Elena," a voice hissed from the shadows. It was her uncle, the man who had orchestrated most of the pursuit. "You've caused enough trouble. It's time to pay." Elena's eyes burned. "I'm done running, and I'm done letting people like you control my life." Jonathan stepped forward. "And you'll have to go through me first." The confrontation escalated quickly, shouts, threats, and a clash of ideals. Jonathan fought with skill and determination, while Elena found courage she had never known, standing tall and refusing to be intimidated. Each word she spoke cut through the lies. Each step she took reclaimed part of her power. Then came the revelation that shook everything. Documents hidden in her father's safe. Proof of corruption, betrayal, and crimes committed by those who had pursued her. Elena held the papers in trembling hands. "This is the truth," she said, voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "Everything you've done, everything you've chased me for, it's all exposed now." The room went silent. Eyes widened, greed turning to fear. Elena felt a strange surge of triumph, a justice she hadn't dared to hope for. And standing beside her, Jonathan's gaze was unwavering, filled with pride and something more, admiration, connection, a bond forged in fire and snow. But the danger wasn't completely over. One last figure stepped forward from the shadows, a man she hadn't seen before, taller than the rest, eyes cold and calculating. He smiled faintly. You think it ends here? You have no idea what's coming. Elena's hands tightened around the papers. She took a deep breath, looking at Jonathan. Then we face it. Together. Jonathan nodded, a silent promise passing between them. They had survived the snow, the chase, the betrayals, and now the ultimate test awaited. The room seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the wind howled through the broken windows, carrying the promise of storm yet to come. And in that moment, Elena realized that survival wasn't enough. Justice, courage, and resilience were what would define her future. She was no longer a girl running through the snow. She was a woman ready to reclaim her life. The final figure stepped forward from the shadows of the Drake Estate's Grand Hall, tall, imposing, and radiating cold authority. Elena's fingers tightened around the stack of documents she had uncovered. The truth her father had tried to bury, the secrets that had cost her months of fear, running, and uncertainty. Jonathan placed a steady hand on her shoulder. No matter what he says, remember this. He only has power if we let him. The man's lips curled into a faint, cruel smile. You really think a few papers can stop what's coming? You've been running for months, hiding, thinking you could escape your fate. But it's here now. Face it. Elena's heart pounded. The weight of fear that had shadowed her entire life pressed down, threatening to crush her resolve. But something inside shifted. All the snowstorms, all the nights spent shivering in barns and forests, all the moments she had feared for her life. They had not broken her. They had forged her. This isn't about fate, she said, voice steady, eyes blazing. It's about choice, and I choose justice. The man laughed, but faltered slightly, sensing the new strength radiating from her. Jonathan stepped beside her, his presence solid, unwavering. And if you try to harm her, you answer to me. The tension in the room was palpable. Shadows of greed, fear, and ambition hovered like ghosts. But Elena felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Control. Authority. Power grounded in truth, in resilience. Slowly, methodically, she spread the documents across the polished table. Bank statements, signed confessions, proof of fraud, contracts that had been manipulated. All of it undeniable. Her uncle and the remaining pursuers glanced at them, their eyes widening as the truth hit them like ice water. This proves everything, one of them stammered. But we... No excuses, Elena interrupted, her voice unwavering. You threatened me, tried to control me, chased me through snow and storm, all for greed and lies. And now it ends. Today justice wins. Jonathan's hand found hers. She could feel the warmth of his palm, steady and reassuring. In that simple gesture, the months of fear, running, and uncertainty melted away. For the first time, she felt safe, not just physically, but emotionally, knowing someone was there who believed in her, trusted her, and fought alongside her. Her uncle swallowed hard, realizing the fight was over. The police had already been alerted by contacts Jonathan had quietly arranged during their escape. And within hours, the men who had haunted her for so long were being led away in handcuffs. Elena exhaled, a mixture of relief and disbelief flooding through her. The storm was over. Not just a literal snowstorm that had brought her to Jonathan's stable months ago, but the storm of fear, injustice, and oppression that had shadowed her entire life. Jonathan watched her, eyes softening. You did it, he said quietly. You stood up, faced them, and didn't let them break you. I knew you could. She looked at him, tears glimmering in her eyes. I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me when no one else did. A smile, small but genuine, spread across Jonathan's face. We believed in each other. That's the difference. The snow outside had melted into glistening rivers, reflecting the sunlight. The air smelled of pine and new beginnings. For the first time in months, Elena felt the warmth of hope, untainted by fear or running. She was free, empowered, and alive. Weeks later, the Drake estate had become more than just a place of fear and secrets. It had been transformed into a home of truth, resilience, and justice. Elena worked alongside Jonathan, rebuilding what had been broken, restoring trust with those who had been deceived, and helping those who had suffered under her family shadow. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Jonathan and Elena stood on the porch of the estate, looking out over the plains. "You've changed everything," Jonathan said softly. "Not just here, but everything. You've changed me too." Elena leaned into him, a sense of peace settling over her. "And you've changed me. You taught me that strength isn't just surviving. It's standing up, facing the storm, and believing in hope even when it's hard." He kissed her forehead gently, and for a moment, all the fear, snow, and pain of the past months seemed like a distant memory. They had survived storms, treachery, and fear, but in the end, courage, truth, and resilience had won. Elena's journey had begun with collapse in the snow outside a stranger's stable, and now it ended with triumph, justice, and the knowledge that she could face anything life threw her way. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings, and together they watched the horizon, ready to step into a future defined by courage, love, and hope.